The question, is that person a Christian, is different than the question, is that person saved? And yet, time and again, I find Christians blurring these two questions, treating them as functionally synonyms, but they're not. They're dealing with very different topics. The question, is that person Christian, is a question that pertains to the church or ecclesiology, the doctrine of the church. In other words, is that person, should they be recognized as a member of the visible church of God? And that question in and of itself can have both a normative and a descriptive interpretation. Normatively, the question is, should I recognize that person as being a member of the church? Descriptively, the question is that person understand themselves to be a member of the church? Do they describe themselves in terms of being a member of the church? So those are the ecclesiological questions. Is that person a Christian? Is that person saved? Is another question entirely. That's the question, is this person ultimately going to be reconciled to God in Jesus Christ and be part of God's kingdom into eternity? Now, the thing I hope that we can appreciate is that we can talk, and I think we should talk all day long about questions of normative ecclesiology. Is that person a Christian is a fair question to ask. And we should ask it, because as Christians, we are called to be thinking about what does it mean to be a member in good standing of this community. But it is not our place to talk about salvation. Ultimately, that is something that God must decide. So, for example, if a person says, and I've known many people like this, well, I'm a Christian, but I don't believe Jesus rose from the dead. Okay, so then we can have a conversation. Should that person continue to be recognized as a member of the church? And in fact, that is a complex question. It ultimately brings us into questions as to what we understand the church to be, whether there are different levels of participation within the church. For example, can a person attend the church when they don't believe that Jesus was resurrected? Can they participate in the sacrament of communion? Can they take on membership? Can they serve as a deacon? Those are all different questions, and we would have to consider each one of those questions. So even the question normatively, is that person a member of the church, is in fact itself a very complex question, whether or not they descriptively understand themselves to be members of the church. But those are questions that we should deal with, and traditionally we have dealt with them under the rubric of church discipline, which is not a very popular way today to talk about the fact that the church does have to guard the boundaries and think through what does membership mean and what are the levels of participation of membership and what level of cognitive assent to particular doctrines is required to remain in good standing in those levels of participation or membership. But again, it is not my place to talk about salvation. It's not my place to say that the person who says that Jesus didn't rise from the dead is going to hell. That is a question that I think God can definitely sort out, but it is not our place to address that question. So always be clear and be sure that you do not conflate the question, is that person a Christian, with the question, is that person saved? You definitely can deal with the first question from a normative perspective and also from a descriptive perspective, understanding what their own self-understanding is. But it's not our place to ultimately opine on whether this person at this moment is on a trajectory of reconciliation to God in Christ or not.